Hey guys, Scott here, and today I want to talk about how good Demogorgon is. I feel like people don't really think he's like the worst or anything like that, but I do think people think he's not as good as he actually is, at least in terms of the chase. In terms of the chase, Demogorgon has actually become quite strong, and I will go over exactly why that is. And it's partly due to some of his add-on changes that I have been using pretty religiously, namely Barb's Glasses. Barb's Glasses makes it so Demogorgon shreds through pallets faster than almost any killer in the game, barring maybe like, a Spirit Fury Enduring Bubba or something like that. So, Demogorgon has always been a pretty decent killer, in my opinion. I've always compared him to Huntress. Thing is, though, people always say Huntress is actually a pretty good killer, and then when you bring up Demogorgon, they think he's like, significantly worse than Huntress. But to me, they play basically the exact same way, where Huntress has some more pros, and there's pros and cons to each. But basically, when you get to a pallet, each killer plays the exact same way. They both ready their power when they're about to get to a window or out of line of sight or to a pallet or something like that. And they both, release their power and hit in basically the exact same way. Now, the pros to Huntress are she can throw over the maps that have low loops, like this one, for example. And Demogorgon, his pro is that he doesn't get slowed down when he's readying his power at all. If you just, feather it for the first 0.65 seconds to actually, introduce the threat of the pallet break or the lunge itself, he doesn't get slowed down even a single percent. So Demogorgon doesn't get punished for his zoning, and Huntress can throw over these short loops. And then in terms of long-range control, Demogorgon can port across the map to his portals. Huntress, as long as she has line of sight, can hit something across the map. So they really do have a lot of similarities, except Demogorgon, also moves faster and doesn't have a big of a warning radius that he's coming, but he is stompy as fuck. So I do compare him to Huntress quite a bit because they do play very, very similarly. And I always just found it weird that people always think Huntress is actually quite good and Demogorgon is like, eh. But they basically are the exact same killer minus the ability to throw over, short loops, which, can be a wonderful boon to Huntress on maps like the Autohaven realm. But for the most part, they play basically the exact same way. Now, I want to go over how the changes to a couple of add-ons have made him extremely frightening to be chased by now, because of how quickly he gets through pallets. Barb's Glasses is the main one that I want to talk about. That's the most impactful one, I think. Barb's Glasses is the remake of a yellow add-on that makes it so you shred pallets 20% faster. To help you appreciate how quick this is, a normal pallet break when you kick it is 2.6 seconds. When you have Brutal Strength, it's 2.08 seconds. When you shred a pallet without add-ons, it's a flat 2 seconds. And when you shred a pallet with Barb's Glasses, it's only 1.6 seconds, which is very, very fast. That means the survivor gains like 6 meters of distance. To give a frame of reference for how much that is, you can shred 11 meters. So you can basically shred twice that distance. So it's really not that much that they actually gain if you break a pallet while they're nearby. And the thing is, there's no reason for the survivor to be far away when you break the pallet due to how you play Demogorgon. Every single time you get to a pallet, you ready your power. There's no downside to doing it, so you might as well do it. They drop the pallet early, you break it, they gain very little distance. If they don't drop the pallet, you cancel your power, walk through it, and you hit them. Now, the only downside is if you walk through the pallet and they vacuum back to it and stun you. But there's also a band-aid for that. If you have Spirit Fury Enduring on Demogorgon, what options does this... Let's look at the actual options a survivor has when they're at a loop. How do you counter Spirit Fury Enduring when you know the killer has it? Well, you drop pallets early. But you can't really do that against Demogorgon because he can get to the pallet and break it in 1.6 seconds. You're not even going to gain enough distance to get to another tile at that point. It's very, very minimal the amount you gain. So dropping pallets in that scenario doesn't actually work. So if you keep running instead, he can just cancel his, of the abyss and walk through it and then just hit you in the face. So that doesn't really work either. And if you actually get the stun on him and he's got Spirit Fury, well, he hits you again in that way. The only scenario where you come out even neutral is if you stun him and he doesn't have his Spirit Fury up. That's the only scenario. And he's going to have it up a lot because he's shredding through pallets a lot. In that scenario, even then, it's not that bad from the Demogorgon because if the survivor gets the stun and goes to make distance, you can just walk around the loop and you have Enduring. So they're actually not going to gain that much distance on you because Enduring is very, very good for that. Now, if they see you have Enduring and they start running away and realize, oh shit, he's actually already coming back around, they'll start looping back around the loop again, at which point they're not any further away from you anymore on the other side of the pallet, and then you just shred through the pallet and you're in the same scenario again. So even in the worst case scenario, it still comes out as like neutral to the survivor. They still get through a pallet insanely fast and they don't really gain that much distance on you. So a Spirit Fury Enduring Demogorgon in a chase, you have almost no options to actually get away unless you have a very good window. That is probably the main thing that will keep you safe from him, and that's it. But, most tiles in the game don't actually have a window in them. You have TL walls, long walls, and long walls, short walls. Those are the main generic tiles of windows. There are other tiles like Shack that have windows, but Demogorgon absolutely destroys at Shack. He's one of the best Shack killers in the game. All you have to do to win at Shack as Demogorgon is peek your head in the doorway with your power up and wait for the animation lock for the fast vault. You'll beat them to the vault because you move insanely fast. It's like 480% movement speed while you're shredding, so you'll beat them there as soon as you wait for the animation lock into the fast vault. If they fake it, you just cancel your your charge, walk up and just hit them. Even if they dead hard to the pallet, you can actually shred through the dead hard, past the distance, past the pallet, and still hit them. So Demogorgon absolutely destroys at Shack too. So even scenarios like that do have strong windows, Demogorgon can still play around them pretty handily. And that's why I think Demogorgon is a lot better than people give him credit for, because of how quickly he shreds through those pallets. And again, if you have Spirit Fury Enduring, in terms of the 1v1 chase, there's almost no options the survivor has other than dropping a pallet very early and hoping to gain some distance, even though they're really not going to gain that much. And this is mostly due to Barb's glasses getting a pretty sizable buff. Like 1.6 seconds is such a fast pallet break time because the survivor's probably not going to immediately react to you doing it too. So it's not like they're gaining the full perfect straight line runaway distance as you're breaking the pallet as well. So it's not like a very black or white scenario there. Every time I've shredded a pallet in that scenario, survivors really just don't get that far away at all. And unless it's like a completely stacked, ridiculous map where there's 50 tiles right next to each other, yeah, if you're on Cowshed, you're going to lose regardless. But it's crazy how little distance that people actually get and how quickly you shred through these pallets. And I think that has made Demogorgon quite scary to go against because he can get through the resources of the map very fast. Now, in terms of the actually, the whole 1v4, he can still do pretty well by setting up a 3-gen. And there's also that new add-on that makes it so you can remove your portals when you teleport to them, so you'll never actually run out when you want to set up a 3-gen later in the match. Because normally you'd have to wait for survivors to actually break your portals to set up a perfect 3-gen. But you can actually break your own portals now if you bring that add-on if you want to set up a 3-gen. And demo controlling a 3-gen is actually pretty good. If you set a portal at every single generator, well, you have constant surveillance on which one that they're on, and you can physically go to whichever one they're on in just a couple of seconds. So Demogorgon's even good at that form of map control. He does have a couple of weaknesses. Like, I'm not saying he's one of the best killers or anything like that. He's definitely not. I just think he is actually way better than people give him credit for. There are things that are not necessarily strong against him, but they sort of negate all of his strengths. For example, like the short rock loops on Shelter Woods. Well, in that scenario, you can't really get a line of sight to the pallet to break it quickly, so it's not as strong because you won't minimize the distance the survivor gains as much because you have to kind of walk up to the pallet a bit more. So in those scenarios, they're not as good. But when you think about those loops, they're shitty loops. They're just 2 rocks and a block. Like they're really actually not that strong to begin with. So the loops that he's not that good on aren't even strong to begin with, and it's not a big deal. The main things he's good on are Shack and generic tiles. T-walls too, he destroys that. Like, he really is good at almost every single tile. And I don't know how people would ever regard Demogorgon as not a good killer, because he definitely seems like a good killer. He's always seemed like a good killer, but these Barb's glasses changes have really made him a lot stronger. And there's also Black Heart, which is an add-on that reduces the cooldown after hitting a successful shred now, which is a great change. So basically, you're not really required to run Save the Best for Last anymore, even though it's still very good on demo. You're not kind of pigeonholed into it anymore because you basically have a permanent 4 stacks to Save the Best for Last, which is nothing to scoff at. So even that is extremely good as well. It opens up new build opportunities like running Spirit Fury Enduring, since you don't need, you can still run that and 2 game delay perks if you want and still be just fine. So yeah, I just wanted to go over how effective demo has been, at least for me recently. I've been playing him for the past 2 weeks. I haven't lost a single game. And I know that doesn't mean that much because, most people are not good. But I struggle to get that level of consistency even, with Huntress or even Blight. I'm sliding off shit on Ormond sometimes and, I'm having a bad time. But Demogorgon seems to be good at almost every map. The game, for example, he's actually very good on the game, which is crazy because the game has all straight loops with very safe pallets. And that means you can have a line of sight to the survivor and the pallet, which means they have to drop the pallet and you get a free break on it. Demogorgon he's one of the few killers in the game that probably can shred through every single pallet on the game before the game ends. Granted, it's just like 20 something. Say this map is stupid as hell, but it's pretty impressive that he can actually do that. So yeah, I think that is about it. I have definitely been super into Demogorgon lately, and I think he is definitely highly underrated. He is one of the better killers. Not one of the best or anything like that, but he's definitely one of the better killers. I'd say on par with Huntress now, which is pretty damn impressive. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.